Because it is such an open sewer of an arrangement, this is the most soul-sucking, despicable and scandalous transaction ever conducted by a head of state not named Borgia. It dwarfs all the scandals in this country's history. Teapot Dome, Watergate, Iran-Contra. It puts in the shade all the grifting and double-dealing and outright theft that democracy is heir to. Welcome to the Atlantic Current. I'm Tull McAdoo from the Irish Politics newsletter, here as always with my good friend Vince Martin from Wall Street, I mean. Vincent, that quote is from Charles P. Pierce, longtime political writer for Esquire magazine. He's talking about the $1.8 billion settlement that Trump has arranged for himself.
I think, it's settlement, I think. That goes in air quotes. It's nice to have our air quotes back, yeah.
Yes, air quotes indeed, my friend. So, I mean, previously, Donald Trump had launched a $10 billion lawsuit before this.
You got to put lawsuit in air quotes, too.
Yeah, I mean, lawsuit in air quotes. I mean, I'm done with air quotes in regards to Donald Trump, to be perfectly honest, my friend.
That's fair.
You know.
Yeah, it was a $10 billion lawsuit filed against the United States Internal Revenue Service over the leaking of his tax returns back in 2019.
Vince, I want to start by quoting you, and this is from episode 42. You said about Donald Trump, air quotes for you, my friend, not for Trump. I'll give you air quotes.
I got it. You threw them in my face. That's not fair.
And I'm not going to do American accent, but I will in one stage. I'll try it from stage. In this term, I actually don't think he himself has been corrupt. Now, Vincent, I have some apples to show you, my friend.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, this was always going to come back and bite you, I think, I suspect. After this week, between this lawsuit and the news about Donald Trump's stock trades, are you going to walk this back? Are you able to stand over this?
I'm doubling down.
Oh,
I am.
God,
I'm going to honor the men in my family. I'm going to honor my Irish ancestors and insist that I am still right, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Yeah, I still don't think he's corrupt. We're going to talk a little bit more about why I'm going to double down. The news of the week, I think, actually can help us get to a point that I've been dancing around on this podcast for a couple of months. So I think we can get to a resolution on why I'm sticking to my guns here.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, from this side of the Atlantic Current, Trump seems to be treating the federal government and the IRS like a broken air fryer or a broken microwave of some sort that he's bringing back to the local Walmart for a refund. He's dropped the IRS lawsuit.
Except he brought it back to Walmart for a refund, but he actually stole it off the back of a truck.
Yes, he's coming up with 3 or 4 more new ones.
Yeah.
He's not swapping like for like. So he's dropped the IRS lawsuit. The government has agreed to drop his tax claims against him and his family.
Right.
And depending on which legal scholars you listen to or read, it seems to be in perpetuity. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean,
I think there's been pushback on that. People said that originally how they read it. I think the consensus now is basically the IRS cannot go after him for anything that they conceivably could have known about today. But it does resolve an audit of Trump that's been going on for, I think, 15 years, something like that. So,
why is an audit taking that long, Vincent?
I think the short version of the story is he's just been fighting it for that long. Taxes for someone like Trump get exceptionally complicated when real estate is involved in particular. And the reporting seems to suggest that had Trump lost that case, he would have been on the hook for something around $100 million in taxes.
Exactly is this $1.8 billion for? So my reading of this, it's anybody that supported Trump that has been aggrieved by the US justice system or tax system or law enforcement gets to dip their hand in this $1.8 billion till. Is the correct reading of that?
I think essentially. People are reporting it as $1.8 billion to round it. The fund is actually $1.776 billion. Nice little allusion to 1776, to the patriotic efforts of the Trump administration on this matter.
Right. So all they're doing there is making corruption look patriotic,
I think so. A few people have made the point that it also highlights just how brazenly insane this whole thing is. Choosing that number is an admission that they could just choose whatever number they wanted. Right. It's not like some judge said, "Oh, this is a fair number." It's not like there was some oversight. They just said, "Oh, that would be a good one. Let's do 1776."
It's 2 fingers to the American taxpayer is what it is, Vincent. You know, I mean,
Yeah, probably.
I mean, in 1974, Nixon resigned for using government agencies against his political enemies. Yeah,
He didn't use government agencies.
Did he not? No.
No,
Right.
No, they weren't. The people who broke into the Watergate, which was the crime that started the cover-up, which brought him down, they were not government employees at the time. They were acting on behalf of his political operation, to the point that Pierce is making up front, and the point that other people made. That's why this somehow does seem worse. He is suborning government agencies into his effort.
And that's where I was going with this. In 2026, all the government agencies are enthralled to Trump. They're under his thumb. And he's rewarding people that have been investigated by government agencies in the past for supporting him. And they're quite naked corruption. Who's administrating this slush fund?
We don't know. He gets to pick 5 people.
All right. You'll be on it?
The 5 who will judge 5 on it. No.
You've been defending him. You've been defending him a lot. He's not corrupt. Surely you're in with a shout.
Boy, I didn't
surely you're in with a shout, Vincent. You might be on the board. Give Tull a few bob.
The problem is I probably got to raise $50,000 in cash and get it to somebody in DC in an envelope, and then maybe I got a chance, right?
Yeah.
As we understand it, he's going to have a board of 5 people, and they will weigh the merits of claims that people submit to this board. One of the other things we don't know is how public this is going to be. They've said that they are going to issue quarterly reports about the money. But federal law around privacy says that the federal government can't wantonly disclose the recipients. Now, there are exceptions to that law. So this, as I understand it, people who are legal experts, because it's unprecedented, they don't know how this is going to work. And if, for instance, those quarterly reports would say, oh, this January 6th defendant got $1.2 million, or if they would be barred from releasing that information. I would think if Trump's involved that they're probably going to do whatever they can to cover up that information. Be better for them to have it be a little less public who's getting these funds.
Now, sources are indicating that the January 6th rioters, insurrectionists, all around bad people in my book, they are going to be compensated also. Is this true?
They are the primary beneficiaries of this fund. Now, the acting attorney general, Todd Blanche, who negotiated this settlement, and it's purely a coincidence, of course, that he literally was Donald Trump's personal attorney like 3 years ago. I mean, you can't make this up. Yeah, Donald Trump's personal attorney's on the other side of the table. But he's made the point that it doesn't have to just be Republicans. People have talked about, could Hunter Biden apply for it? Joe Biden's son, James Comey, the former director of the FBI, who's been indicted by the Trump DOJ, he said, hey, maybe I should apply. And I think in theory, he could apply. He could make a case to this board that the Department of Justice weaponized their powers at the direction of the president to go after me, and I need compensation. So as they're describing it, this is not just a slush fund for January 6 people. The problem is, I think, when you look at what this administration is saying and believes about January 6th, they are quite obviously the people that you would think are most likely to succeed in these claims, and there are a lot of them. When we did the January 6th episode, I think we said there was 1,600 arrests, something like that. So there are a lot of people who ostensibly are eligible for this fund.
Look, from my lily-livered European pro-justice biases over here, there was one thing I remember. They were breaking into people's offices and trashing their offices, defecating in their offices.
Smearing excrement on the wall in at least one instance.
Yeah. In one instance, and they're entitled to some compensation for that. Am I reading that right? Am I, is there steam coming out my ears, Vince? Can you, I'm just at a loss. I'm just at
I do feel terrible for
loss.
You, Tull, because we were literally talking just before recording and you were telling me how your doctor told you need to get your blood pressure down. We're sitting here. And I'm worried if you're going to actually make it through this episode. I'm sure some of our listeners agree. When we did that January 6th episode, we talked a lot about how the right, almost as soon as it happened, started trying to rewrite the narrative, right? Rewrite history. The FBI informants and all these sorts of things. What you're saying is absolutely true. These people are the people in line. But because that narrative has now gone to a point where these people, and I don't think this word is an exaggeration, are martyrs. They were people who were just peacefully exercising their right to free speech. They showed up at the Capitol. Oh, yeah, some of them went in the Capitol, but that's because the policemen just opened the doors and let them in. Yeah, there was some violence, but the people who committed the violence, they weren't actual patriots. They weren't Trump supporters. Now, supposedly they were FBI informants. If you go back a couple of years, they were supposedly Antifa, but I guess somehow Antifa doesn't. Everyone on the right talked about Antifa being there for 3 years, and I guess they have no evidence of it now, so they just stopped talking about it. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, people say that this is, at its heart, is a $1.8 billion slush fund for people who stormed, invaded, attacked, whatever word you want to use, the Capitol on January 6, 2021. That's what it is, man.
I was at the January 6th riots in case Donald Trump is listening or MAGA people are listening. I'm stuck for a few, Bob. There's going to be a stampede of MAGA ex-accounts claiming that they were at, the January the 6th riots.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you had to have been arrested. Which is kind of the funny selection bias about this. The people who are going to get compensated are the people who got arrested. The people who got arrested are, generally speaking, the people who behave the worst. Because we talked about this too. There was so much media footage of that created by the people at the protests. All these people, right? My favorite story we did there was the realtor. There's a realtor from Texas live streaming the Facebook from the middle of the Capitol advertising her business. Look, I got in the Capitol. I can get your house. I can get you 20 grand above ask for your house.
It's not even a crime. It's an insurrection against the Republic, Vincent. And, I'm one for flurry rhetoric and all that. But I mean, this deal is a slap in the face for justice, isn't it?
I think it is. It is the end result of what we've talked about so many times, of the fractured reality in this country.
In modern Western liberal democracies, justice is supposed to be blind, not blindfolded, bait over the head with some, and thrown into the back of a car. Yeah. I mean, if ordinary people are told that the law is the law, and then watching Trump and his cohort of insurrectionists wriggle out of one mess and they get a payoff, people are just going to say, well, the law is for, other people. Why should I obey the law? Why should I be a good, upstanding, moral citizen? It's this kind of Trumpian theatrics, and the 1.776 billion. It's a two fingers to the taxpayers, it's two fingers to the whole world. The Eurocrat WhatsApp groups were agog
sure.
with it, and it makes a deeply cynical person like me feel underappreciated, Vincent. If you want to be honest. So
it's a rough one. It's a rough one to support. But we're going to circle back to the idea of corruption. In the context of what we're saying, what we're both saying, it does seem insane that I'm going to be like, no, actually, I don't think Donald Trump is corrupt. And let me be clear. I think that this is an exceptionally corrupt deal. I think one big reason Donald Trump is doing this is that Donald Trump believes every word he's saying. I don't think this is corrupt in the sense that he is a stereotypically corrupt politician where he saw an angle that he could use to raise some money and pay off his allies. I think he believes every word he is saying about weaponization. I think if he was on here, you would say all that stuff and he would go, no, these people they didn't do anything wrong. They were completely and totally mistreated by the federal government. Even the people who did stuff wrong, they were put in jail. They were denied bail. The investigations were false. The sentences were too long. These people were victimized by the federal government. I actually do believe, and I'm sure some listeners and maybe you think I'm an idiot or naive or whatever word you want to use. I think he believes every single word of that. I think he absolutely believes that what he is doing is the just and right thing. I really do.
Vincent, I actually do agree with you up to a point that he actually believes all that. I genuinely do think he believes all that. But I actually also believe the corruption goes hand in hand with that. And he's milking that for everything he can get. That's exactly what he's doing here. He's milking the US tax system. He's giving two fingers to democracy, law, order, justice. You make me sound like a mad right-winger Republican from the 1980s. I feel like a Texas Republican from the 80s, Vincent, is what I feel like at the moment when I'm looking at Trump.
Crack down on these soft-on-crime liberals. That's
right. And it's astonishing how the guardrails, the Constitution guardrails of the United States don't exist. Not even remotely. My inner nihilism, my inner nihilism is deeply amused by all this, of course. And basking in the sunshine of it, Trump's corruption. But this has serious long-term consequences, and people kind of don't believe me when I say this, but this has serious long-term consequences because, as we've said before in the podcast, whatever comes after Trump knows he can do the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, for sure.
Now, let me ask you something else. Is there any hope for the Republican Party here? Is there anybody pushing back against this?
There's one Republican member of the House of Representatives.
One. How many members are there, Vincent?
What are there, 218 or 219?
And one lone soldier.
How many do you expect, man? Do you think these guys are... I mean, look, do you think these guys are going to stand up to Trump? They just watched Thomas Massie, who was 6 months ago was one of the most popular Republicans in the entire party. Just got his handed to him in a primary to a guy who, like, no one's ever heard of. Trump just ran him right out of town. Yeah, there is one Republican representative who went on record saying that, quote, "We're going to kill it." You will be proud to know, Tull, that he is a representative from Pennsylvania named Brian Fitzpatrick.
Right, okay. Yeah. Brian Fitzpatrick. He's definitely an Irish-American, Vincent, I suspect, is he?
Yeah. Credit to our con so far. And a couple of senators have come out and said, given their typical waffling answers, because it's so weird in a way. I mean, it is unprecedented. It's just a novel structure for this kind of thing. I think part of the issue in the early going is no one's 100% sure, like, how do you stop this? So if let's say Congress did go pass a law and said, no, you can't do this. The first thing the administration will do is file a lawsuit in a federal district court, and join the Senate bill. Now, this, of course, after Trump vetoes it. So not only does Congress have to pass it, they have to pass it with enough people to override the veto. If it does get passed, it's going to go to court. I don't think that case gets done before he's out of office. If it does, not till the end of the term, he could probably just go ahead and pay all the money out. In terms of those guardrails, everyone's been talking about various aspects of that over Trump, since he took over. In this particular case, I think it's hard to know if the guardrails are going to work because nobody built guardrails for this. It's not like a road that has guardrails. He just took a bulldozer through a forest. So nobody knows what the hell to do.
Just coming back to this Brian Fitzpatrick fellow, he's a former FBI agent, I believe, is he?
Yeah, he's a quite moderate and I think pretty respectable Republican.
Yes, he's from outside Philadelphia, but the Fitzpatrick name is from County Kenny, Midlands there. So this is a man of law and order, so he sees what's going on here, I suspect. He's an ex-district attorney, and he's probably can't sleep at night because his conscience is at him.
Yeah, he's been a little bit of a critic, and he has been. I mean, he's a moderate Republican. He's from outside Philadelphia, so you kind of have to be. That's not exactly MAGA country, right? He's not some Texas guy who has to toe the line or else he'll get primaried out. But yeah, going back to your question, no, there's really has not been much opposition from the GOP. And it's because, as I just alluded to, the recent elections kind of show why that's going to be, right?
Yeah. Thomas Massie, he had a very high profile over here in Europe because he alluded to letting on that he knew all kinds of things about Epstein and stuff. So that's why that gave him a very high profile across the pond here in Europe. That when we were looking to link Trump to Epstein and all that, he was kind of dropping hints that there was connections and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
he got really kind of tied in with the Epstein files, which wound up getting him on the wrong side of Trump and a lot of other people. And that combined with some other votes and some other concerns around Iran and things like that. I mean, he has kind of positioned himself as a principled libertarian who was going to push back when Trump went too far in the Constitution and things like that. And I'm not 100% sure I believe that, to be honest with you. I think people who are rushing to make him a hero, a martyr who stood up to Trump for his principles, I think maybe should take a little closer look at what some of those principles are, because some of them are just nuts. But yeah, he was a hugely popular guy 6 months ago.
Stop. Vincent, let me stop you here. You can't come out and say the guy says something, that's really nuts and not explain and not elaborate. Come on.
What do you mean? We've been doing this podcast for 8 months. Exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be he's a Republican. It's going to be some nonsense conspiracy theory. He's into all conspiracy theories about Israel. His whole thing with the Epstein files has just been nuts. The things that he said, the things he's come to believe. Like you said, he's always hinting at all these stuff. He's always saying, I can go read all these names out into the Congressional Register and no one can do anything because I'm constitutionally protected. He's a guy who really just kind of started to believe his own the last couple months. I don't really have a whole lot of trust in Trump or J.D. Vance, but I do kind of get why they wanted to take him down, and it's not just because they are somehow evil. He's not someone that historians are going to look back as one of like the ethical titans of our time. Let's put it that way.
Yes, but everybody clings to a lifeboat in a storm, and Thomas Massey is,
especially when all the other lifeboats are tied to the military destroyer, not going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's not a good guy. He's posted some conspiracy theories. I think he's all over. I think, you could probably, there's a bit of anti-Semitism going on there, I suspect, is there? We've just scratched the surface.
You could make that case, and a lot of people got upset. He came out to concede, and literally the first line out of his mouth was something bad. He wanted to call and concede, but he didn't know where in Tel Aviv his opponent was. I mean, just right at it.
That's a good joke, in fairness.
It's a good joke. We'll grant that. Yep.
But that's all you'd grant them, in fairness. So there's a lot of, I have to say this, there's a lot of conspiracy theories now around him losing the election. The Israelis have been blamed, Tull has been blamed.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah. MAGA's now saying that Massey, the election fraud. 20 years. Oh, Democrats commit election fraud. One guy loses his primary and half of MAGA's. Oh, yeah. Look at all these suspicious numbers in Kentucky. Where did all these voters come from? It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Good grief. It's never ending. It's a case of, if I die in the morning, there's going to be a whole host of conspiracy theories grow up around it. If Vince had me killed, you were working for the FBI or the CIA or something nefarious.
Well, yeah, especially if we put this episode out and we hear all, people hear all the terrible things you're saying. And absolutely. Yeah. All people are going to do is connect the dots.
And when it comes to American elections, the guy that he ran against in the primary, he's guaranteed to win that seat, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, that's over. Yep.
So the most interesting part about everything that was going on in Kentucky, the last few weeks was the fact that this was the primary. This was the only interesting race. When it comes to the midterms, the most interesting part of this race is already over.
I think Massey won like 70% of the vote of his last campaign. No Democrat is winning that seat under any circumstances.
I have a question there as well. Is Kentucky one of the largest receivers of federal aid, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I mean, that's always the funny thing. The more Republican state is, the more federal aid it gets. It's a very strange thing.
Yes, that's a weird kind of dichotomy there, that maybe the strongest opponents of the federal state are the ones with their hand out the most, looking for the most money. Yeah.
It's one of the most under-discussed, bizarre aspects of American politics, that all our blue states are screaming at the federal government to take more money from them because they fund the federal government. I think California gets back like 63 cents or something like that for every dollar in federal tax revenue they contribute. Massachusetts is not much higher. And then all the red states, who are getting the benefits of all these tax dollars. In the South, it's generally $1.50, $1.80. Like the real Western states, like Wyoming, they get like $6, whatever it is, worth of stuff for every dollar they send. They're all screaming, no, we don't want your money, you communists, take it back. I mean, it is one of the weirdest things, and it's been part of American politics for at least half a century. It is a very, very funny little thing. Yeah.
Now, Vincent, there's some other corruption going on here that we need to touch on with Trump, or in what you might push back against corruption. Okay. We went off piece there. That's not like us, but
never happened before. It's stunning.
So in the first quarter of 2026, accounts belonging to Donald Trump made over 3,000. This is a stunning number. 3,700 trades.
Yeah.
Many of which were in companies directly affected by his decisions as president.
Yeah.
Now, some may look very suspicious, like the NVIDIA one is the one that comes to mind off the top of my head.
Yeah, the NVIDIA one is the worst one. We found out in these disclosures, which came out recently, that he had bought the stock, and then a week later he says, oh yeah, NVIDIA can sell their chips to China, and the stock goes up 9%. That one looks bad. I'll grant you that.
Looks. I've alarm bells going off my bloody brain. There's some great quotes about Trump's trades by the Financial Times and Bloomberg and all the rest of them. Did you see some of them, did you?
The Bloomberg piece I saw was just basically people being confused.
Do you think
they just called a bunch of people in finance and they were like, I have no idea what the hell's going on here.
Yeah, the Financial Times spoke to some other people and said that it is astonishing. if I was his broker and I made that many trades, I'd report him to what we'd call a financial ombudsman over here and stuff like that. Like, the amount of trades that are going on are just off the charts.
It is unbelievably bizarre. And I don't think that aspect of it has gotten enough attention. People are kind of pointing to this as you're saying, like, oh, it's corrupt, this NVIDIA trade. And then he does that. He has Palantir. The Palantir one is weird too, because he owned the stock and then he went on True Social and posted, hey, everybody go buy Palantir, and actually put the stock ticker on, which is, I grant you, is, it looks a little damning. But
I'm sorry, Vince, it just looks, I think it blows a hole in Vince's theory that, Trump believes this stuff, but he's not wholly corrupt. I think that blows a big hole in your theory there, I think, my friend.
I don't know that he actually knew he owned Palantir at that point. I think it's just as likely that someone around him who owned Palantir kind of suggested that he do that. We're inching towards the point I want to make here. But yeah, let me cover this kind of real quick, because I think it's an interesting story, and I want to put it in the context of something. We discussed this back in March, which is the American people have come to believe that Congress people are regularly trading on inside information to make millions of dollars every year.
I suggested that. Yep.
Yeah. And that is a bipartisan belief. We have all sorts of polling. People overwhelmingly want Congress people to be banned from stock trading. So this news, I think you have to kind of put in the context of that belief. As I said in March, and I wrote about this last year, we'll put it in the Substack. You probably know this because you're a writer. There are articles you write because you think people will want to read them. And then there are sometimes articles you write because you just have to get the words out of your head. It doesn't like you kind of, yeah. This one was that. I don't even know how much time or energy I spent on this piece. It was not anywhere commensurate to its value to society, but I needed to get it done. But in any case, I don't believe the insider trading stuff at all. And there's three reasons.
Anyway, sorry for booing you.
That's fine. No. Hey, we got to disagree. We can't, what kind of podcast would this be if we were just sitting here self-righteously bitching about corruption for an hour?
Yes, this is true.
So look, like I said, there's three broad reasons I don't believe Congress is doing it, and I think they all apply to Trump. The first is that people point to individual trades, whether it's by Congress or by Trump, and they go, oh man, look, that's suspicious. This congressperson bought this, and then this happened, and the stock went up. Well, there's thousands of trades. There's going to be trades that look weird. The fact that there's only a couple that are weird, I think actually kind of suggests that there may not be something going on here. And NVIDIA is particular one that literally every investor and every financial advisor has their client in NVIDIA right now.
Okay.
So it's not weird that he owns NVIDIA. It almost would be weird if he didn't. So that's point number one. What do you think about that one?
Yes, look, it makes sense, right? Okay, it makes sense. But so does he have to go? He has to go through a broker for this, yes?
One of the problems is we don't know who's actually running the money, and we don't know specifically. And we actually are not entirely sure how this works because we keep getting explanations from different people, whether it's a Trump organization, the family business, or from the government that are actually kind of not the same. Yeah.
J.D. Vance gave a press conference yesterday and he said it wasn't insider trading because he has somebody else to do it for him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Vance's argument. He goes, look, he's not on Robinhood buying his own stocks. Like, yeah, everyone's like, yeah, that's not how this works. That's not the point.
That's what I was asking. Is he like me messing around on Revolut? That is what we have over here in Europe.
I don't think he is.
No,
I don't. I think cherry picking trades, if you trade this much, and we're going to get to that part of it because it's really fascinating, there's going to be weird trades. The other big thing here too, and it's a little different for Trump because we're in this AI bubble / boom where government decisions really matter how the industry is going to play out. And because his presidency is so active. This whole idea though in America that people in government can quote insider trade is based on the idea that there's insider information that's like going to make like massive amounts of money. And that's not how America works. Like if you're a congressperson or even if you're a president, like you're not steering the future of these companies, particularly in big tech. Like NVIDIA doesn't do much with the government. Facebook does nothing with the government, all these sorts of things. And even like one of the trades is just weird. His account bought Thermo Fisher, which is a manufacturer of scientific equipment. The account bought the stock the same day he went and toured their facility. But they only disclose these in a range. The trade was between $15,000 and $50,000.
Yeah, I saw
Like,
that. Why is
come
that?
on, man. Like, why are we talking about this? Even if he had inside information, he made like $60. Like,
Why
like
is that? Why they do not give specifics? So
I honestly don't know why they put it in a range. I think one possible thing is that they might be worried that if you had to do a specific dollar amount, that people might be able to kind of reverse engineer what the trades were or track you or things like that. But that's a wild guess. I don't know why they do it as in a range like that.
Let me push back there against what you said there between 15K and 50K. There was, I think, 14 trades was there between 1 and 5 million, and another 4 trades between 5 and 25 million, if I'm reading that graph right.
The total amount of the trading, believe it or not, could have been much as $700 million in the course of the quarter.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on there, Vincent. There's a lot going on there. And
there is a lot going on here. That's where we're going to get after point number 3. My last point, we're going to see if this one convinces you at all. This is really the biggest problem with the congressional insider trading argument. But again, this applies to Trump too. If he is insider trading, if these people are insider trading, why are they just telling everybody that they're doing it? Do you know what the punishment is if you don't disclose it?
I think you might get a smack on the wrist, perhaps, judging by what's going on over there at the moment.
It's a $200 fine.
Right.
Trump actually paid the $200 fine in this disclosure. It was late. He paid the $200.
Wow.
So if you believe all this stuff, whether it's Trump or whether it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, who people on the right have gone after over this, after she kind of fell out of favor with Trump, all these people, Nancy Pelosi is the most famous one, former Democratic Speaker of the House. You have to believe that they're doing this illegal, criminal, corrupt, swampy activity, making millions of dollars, and then just telling everybody so that they don't have to pay a $200 fine. It's asinine. If they were really doing this, you wouldn't know. They wouldn't tell you.
I don't think you would not be able to cover it up, I think, anyway.
Why not? How are you not covering it up? The only way that it gets exposed is if it gets leaked from your broker.
Yes, everything gets leaked, Vincent. Everything gets
You think?
leaked.
I don't know. Like, I maybe get that argument a little more for Congress. I think that argument actually really helps Trump, right? If Donald Trump is here listening to this discussion, you know what he would do? He would not disclose any more of his trades. He would wait till they got leaked. Eventually, he would sue the government for allowing them to be leaked. And then he would have another slush fund for his allies, right?
No.
So I don't think Trump is disclosing this if he thinks he's doing something wrong. I just don't.
Okay. How many trades did George W. Bush make when he was president?
I have no idea. And I'm sure wasn't 3,700 in 3 months.
Well, I did my homework before this. He put everything in a blind trust. He put everything in a blind trust.
Yeah, that's the other thing, yeah.
Obama, zero. Zero is what he tells me. Bill Clinton famously couldn't put his pants on straight. Yes, he put everything in a blind trust as well. Right, okay. Yeah. So, well, Vincent, $700 million. It's not pocket money. It's not blind trust money. I think he knows he can get away with doing what he wants. There's an element of the Tull's theory. What Trump told us from day one was that he can go up to somebody on, Times Square, shoot somebody in the head and get away with it.
Yep.
I'm not sure. Look, would I do any different? I'd probably try to be more cunning about it. But, I mean, ultimately, he can do whatever he wants. And the Republic of the United States of America, I'm afraid, is an oligarchy now. It's not a republic anymore, my friend. Okay. There's a lot going on here that reminds me of not Russia in the late 90s, but Russia, I suppose, in the mid-noughties, late noughties. But a lot of people around Trump enriching themselves in the same manner. Putin doesn't seem to have enriched themselves, but everybody else around him seems to have enriched themselves. You never saw Putin engaging in open corruption, but there's a lot of people around him engaging in open corruption. There's that same vibe, that same smell, that same aura. And I know I say this a lot, Vincent, but I do think Trump is massively corrupt. And you've put up sterling arguments. In fairness, I mean, you should have become a man of law.
I've been told that before.
I will give credit where credit's due. I mean, you've made solid arguments, but I'm just not buying them. And for the simple reason is Occam's razor is the most obvious answer staring you in the face.
I'm going to make one point, and then the Occam's razor is perfect segue to where I wanted to take this. So I get that $700 million is a lot of money. 3,700 trades in 3 months is weird. 3,700 trades in 3 months is really weird because he wasn't doing any of this last year. We have disclosures from last year. This isn't like, oh, this is the first 3 months of his presidency. And he was buying corporate bonds and municipal bonds and things like that, which are actually pretty appropriate for a 79-year-old billionaire. What's really funny to me, if you went to somebody who works in wealth management in America and you said, hey, I saw the account of this client, of this guy. He's a 79-year-old billionaire. He's got outside people running his money and they made 3,700 trades in the first quarter. He would probably laugh out loud. And what he would say is, oh my God, they are churning the account. That's kind of along the lines of what you were talking about with that FT article, right? He would say their brokers need to get reported to regulators. There are stories about this like a couple times a year of somebody is a financial advisor on Long Island or something. They get a client who's 77. He's got $3 million. They sign over power of attorney and all of a sudden the guy's investing in crypto and he's buying all these crazy funds that pay huge fees, kickbacks to the broker. And, the broker's out buying a Lamborghini on this guy's savings. To anyone in the financial industry, what this looks like hysterically enough is Donald Trump getting scammed, getting conned, getting financial advice from people who are either trying to build up their own revenue or who are trying to create a level of activity that suggests that they're actually doing stuff when the smartest thing to do would just be to put half his money, if that, in an index fund and the other half in bonds and just go home. All of this actually really looks like he's getting scammed by his people.
I don't know.
It looks way more like that to me than him executing some unrecognizable strategy.
My problem there is that his NVIDIA trades, okay, and I saw the NVIDIA CDO, Henson Hang, was in Beijing with him. The stock price is going up. Okay, Trump
after Trump specifically called him, told him he needed to come. Yep.
6 of Trump's trades involved Intel, which his administration took a 10% stake in. I mean,
why didn't the trades happen before? If it was insider trading, those trades needed to happen before Trump made that deal. He didn't buy it until after.
Who knows, Vince? And we're actually assigning, I suppose, mad genius tag to Trump here to a certain extent also, that he's in full control of everything that's going on in Oz, so to speak, that he's the man behind the green curtain pulling all the strings, a master strategist playing 4D chess. And it's entirely plausible that he hasn't got a notion what's going on with his trades and the like.
You just walked right to the point I'm trying to make with all this stuff. And it's an argument we have had a couple times. There was the fun one where you were saying, oh, I think he has dementia because he's saying that, he was the only person who called out Osama bin Laden as a threat. And I was like, yeah, he did that in 2015. He's the same.
Yeah.
Here's the thing with all this. Well, you said, oh, it's Occam's razor. Occam's razor for all this stuff is very simple. Donald Trump is a moron. Donald Trump has no idea what is going on. He does not know how the world works. He does not know who's running his money, does not really understand what his kids are doing with crypto. People go, oh, look at the corruption that his children are doing, raising all these meme coins and stuff. Yeah, they're unbelievably corrupt. They're not going to Donald Trump and be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Some idiots whispering in his ear in 2023 at Mar-a-Lago, hey, crypto's really great. You should get on board. It'll help you politically. And he does a U-turn and his kids profit. The corruption argument requires him to care. It requires him to work hard. It's really hard to be corrupt. It's really hard to lie. That's why he's such a liar. Like people who are really good political liars, you know them, right? They have to keep track of all the stuff they're saying. He doesn't even bother. He's not smart enough. He's not organized enough.
Which goes to my other point that I keep making, that there's no guardrails in the United States. So
there's no guardrails against morons. No, there's not.
I mean, that goes for all jurisdictions. But I mean,
I suppose.
3,700 trades, $700 million in trades.
But remember, we talked a couple weeks ago about his company, his Trump Media.
Yes.
His stake is still on paper, is still worth $1 billion. He put a former member of the House of Representatives in to run it. The guy ran it into the ground, and he didn't care, doesn't seem to notice. Like, my point is, no, I think that he has just really advisors who are they're executing some kind of strategy. I can't imagine what it is. I don't think it's not good. It's not smart. There's no world in which what they're doing makes any financial sense for Donald Trump. And I think that reflects what happens so often with him. is that he does something that doesn't make sense, or he says something that doesn't make sense, and his supporters have to go, oh, well, obviously it's 4D chess. And his critics will then go, oh, well, obviously it's corruption. When the answer is, you know why he's doing something that doesn't make sense? Like I have not wanted to be the guy like just picking on Trump over in the show so far, but we're just at a point where I can't kind of keep like smirking at you, like alluding to the fact that I don't think he's that bright. We just kind of got to come out and say it. Like he's an idiot. He does. And where we're at here, I think he is so dumb that even his critics can't quite fathom it. They can't fathom how you can be 79 years old and be on TV and be in real estate and be president for 5.5 years and literally not understand how the world works. And he doesn't. You can name the issue. You can, if you actually listen to what he's talking about on any issue, he physically does not understand how the world works at all.
So, Vincent, what you're saying to me there is that my Occam's razor, which I'm very fond of, and I apply quite liberally in life, to be perfectly honest, probably too much. But what you're saying is what we're talking about is Hanlon's razor, right? Okay.
Yep.
Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity.
Yeah, I think that's dead on. Think of his signature issues, right? He's been talking about trade for 50 years. That's not an exaggeration. He does not know what a trade deficit is. He literally doesn't know. Even his critics go, oh, assume, I think when he talks about us losing money to China, they go, oh, that's probably just the way he talks. Oh, he's hyperbolic. No, he physically does not understand what that word is, what that concept is. He doesn't understand what tariffs are. He doesn't understand who pays tariffs. Immigration is the other one. His very first speech, the famous speech at Trump Tower, what's that, June 2015, that summer, right? He's with the famous thing about the Mexicans. So they're, rapists and drug dealers. He said something that he has said that since then, they're sending. He seems to believe that immigrants are pushed by their country. He has said repeatedly that these countries are emptying out their insane asylums to send their immigrants to America. People have, I think, correctly speculated is that at some point he heard the word asylum in the discussion of immigration. It didn't know what it meant in terms of immigration, so he just assumed that it had to mean like a mental asylum. I don't think people understand how far down you have to go to see how he views the world. And the idea that he's running a financial corruption ring is nuts. He doesn't have the capability for that. He has never, when he was 35 years old, he didn't have the capability for that.
So the genius of the Trumpian chaos is that it's never clear what his intentions are, what his motives are, what he's trying to achieve, essentially. And that's what makes him so hard to predict. I do actually buy in, and I know I've pushed back a lot in here. I do actually buy into that, what you're saying, on some level.
But I think, to your point about, the genius of it, I think his inability to view the world also allows people around him to do what they want with impunity because they can just tell him what he wants to hear. Like, I'm not saying there's no corruption here. There's vast corruption. This deal with the IRS is horrific. I do think that there are people around him who are insider trading in the crude markets, as we've talked about.
Yeah.
You can very rightly say Trump is a grown man and there are a lot of things going on that he at very least should know about. You've talked about that. The fish rots from the head, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he doesn't seem to care about any of this stuff allows people around him to act with impunity. I think when people get to this idea that he is leading these efforts, I think it's just a mistake that people have made for 11 years. It's almost impossible to believe that he could have gotten to this point with such basic misunderstandings. But if you actually take a second and think through what he thinks, think through what he says, think about how many times Donald Trump has said, I know more about X than anyone.
A lot.
I'm sure there's got to be like on YouTube, people like mash that up, right?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of times he said he loves Ireland and they have a golf course there, but he's alluding to he knows everything about Ireland because he has a golf course there.
Yeah.
So.
He knows everything about nuclear, as he says, because his uncle taught at MIT. That's one of his famous ones.
Yeah.
I think he actually believes that, and I think that explains so much of what we're talking about. He just assumes that he knows everything. His supporters go, he's never changed his mind on trade. Yeah, well, that's not a plus. That's not a sign of intellectual rigor. That's a sign of somebody who just assumes they know how the world works when they don't and has no ability to learn anything. But if you think you know everything about the world, this unfortunately is a conversation I have with my 6-year-old all the time.
Yes, I do the same.
Thankfully, I was going to say, thankfully for everybody, she's not president of the United States, but both as a father and American, I think I would prefer if she was president of the United States right now. I think that'd be better for everybody.
When you lay it out like all that, and we're going to have another podcast about this, because otherwise our producer, you will have a nervous breakdown trying to edit it. But
it is. I'm going to interrupt you real quick because it is very funny that we started this by worrying about your mental state, and I've spent the last 15 minutes I can actually feel myself building. We got to start doing podcasts on, I don't know, get my 6-year-old on here. We'll talk about rainbows for 20 minutes. I can calm down. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Vincent, I've come to a troubling conclusion that the fact is, and we'll do this in another podcast, is that the problem is not with Donald Trump. The problem is with the people that keep voting for him.
Yeah.
That is what the real issue here, that this is the nub of the issue here, isn't it? You get what you vote for.
Yeah, in a democracy, everybody gets what they deserve, yeah.
Yes, and you were voting against Kamala Harris. You were voting against Hillary Clinton. I mean, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face there, aren't you? The American electorate.
I think a little bit, yeah.
Well, Vincent, on that terrible, sad note.
That was bad by our standards, yeah.
That was almost upbeat by our standards, yes. I'm going off to apply for my January 6th reimbursement fund off Donald Trump. So, thoughts and prayers, Vincent.
I appreciate it. We will need them.
Of course. I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter.
And I'm Vince Martin from Wall Street, Maine. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.